All right, today we are diving into something really different. We're looking at a text that's part psychological manual, part philosophical warning. It's about the art of seduction, but probably not in the way you're thinking. Forget pickup lines, forget simple tricks. We are going deep into the world of Jungian psychology to understand attraction as a force of nature, one that is both incredibly powerful and, frankly, pretty perilous. So let's jump right in. The manual kicks off with a question that, let's be honest, has probably crossed all of our minds at some point. You've seen it, right? That person who walks into a room and just has this magnetism. They draw people in seemingly without trying. And then there are others, maybe just as smart, just as successful, just as kind, who might as well be invisible. What's the difference? Well, according to this text, the answer has nothing to do with looks or money or status. It's about something much, much deeper. Something happening on a completely unconscious level. And boom, right there on page 1, the author lays their cards on the table. This is not a self-help book you casually skim. This is a warning. The message is crystal clear. The knowledge you're about to gain is powerful, and like any powerful tool, it can be used for creation, but it can just as easily turn on you and burn everything to the ground. We're not just talking about social dynamics here. We're talking about a journey into the human psyche, and that is always, always a high-stakes game. So, to really illustrate what's at stake, the manual doesn't start with a modern dating scenario. No, it throws us back in time, to the opulent and treacherous courts of 18th century France. We're going to look at the life of one of the most powerful men in the world at the time, King Louis XV, and the one woman who managed to completely captivate him. This isn't just presented as a historical romance. The source wants us to see it as a profound psychological case study in power, influence, and obsession. So let's talk about Jeanne Poisson, better known to history as Madame de Pompadour. Now you have to understand, she wasn't royalty. She wasn't from some powerful noble family. She was, essentially, a commoner who rose from total obscurity. And yet for 2 decades, she wasn't just the king's chief mistress, she was his closest confidant, his most trusted advisor. How did she do it? According to this manual, her power wasn't just about being beautiful or charming. Her true genius was her intuitive, deep understanding of the king's inner world. His fears, his hidden desires, his deepest insecurities. She wasn't just playing a social game, she was playing a psychological one. So how did she wield such influence? The manual explains her success through a core concept from Carl Jung, the anima. Okay, so what is the anima? In Jungian theory, it's the unconscious, feminine aspect that exists within every man's psyche. It's this deep, internal image of woman that shapes his attractions, his creative impulses, and his relationships. It's not a real person, but an archetype. The text argues that Madame de Pompadour's incredible power came from her ability to become the living, breathing embodiment of King Louis's anima. She didn't just appeal to him, she fulfilled a profound, unconscious need that he probably wasn't even aware he had. And that's where true, lasting influence comes from, a level far beneath the surface. Okay, so this brings us to the real engine of the manual's philosophy. And this is where it gets really provocative, maybe even a little uncomfortable. The text introduces 2 fundamental ideas that you have to grasp: the concept of the shadow and something it calls ethical manipulation. And it presents this knowledge as an incredibly sharp, double-edged sword. One side can lead to profound connection and self-awareness. The other, well, it leads to ruin. Now, let's just address the elephant in the room. The word manipulation makes most of us cringe, right? It sounds awful. But the manual tries to carve out a very specific definition. Ethical manipulation, as it's described here, is not about coercion. It's not about forcing someone to do something they don't want to do. The idea is that it's a form of persuasion that identifies and awakens desires that are already there within a person but are lying dormant, maybe repressed. But, and this is a huge but, the manual screams a warning from every page. It says the line between this kind of ethical persuasion and pure selfish exploitation is razor thin. It is dangerously easy to cross and even easier to lie to yourself about which side you're on. So to even begin to walk that line, you have to understand another core Jungian idea, the persona versus the shadow. This is absolutely crucial. Think of the persona as your public mask. It's your resume, your polite smile, the version of you that you show at work or at a family dinner. It's the good, socially acceptable you. The shadow, on the other hand, is everything you've pushed into the basement of your psyche. It's your repressed anger, your selfishness, your envy, your lust, your secret hunger for power and control. Now, the key thing here is that the shadow isn't necessarily evil. It's just authentic. It's the parts of you that society, your parents, or you yourself decided were unacceptable to show. And this right here, this is the absolute heart of the entire manual. The text argues that most people live in one of two states. They either pretend their shadow doesn't exist, which leads to a weak and inauthentic life, or they are secretly controlled by it, acting out its desires unconsciously. The path to real psychological power and therefore true seductive ability isn't to kill the shadow, it's to integrate it. That means you have to go down into that basement, turn on the lights, and have a long, honest conversation with what you find. You have to acknowledge it, understand it, and learn to consciously channel its immense energy. This raw self-awareness, the manual argues, is the foundation for everything else. So, okay, if integrating your shadow is the goal, what does that actually look like in practice? How do you even start? Well, the manual lays out what it calls a fourfold path. But I want to be clear, this isn't a simple to-do list. It's not step 1, step 2, you're done. These are 4 interconnected disciplines, 4 habits of mind that have to be cultivated all at once. They all grow from that central principle of radical self-awareness. So let's break them down. First, observe deeply. This means you stop listening to just the words people say and start paying attention to everything else. The hesitations, the body language, the topics they avoid. You're looking for the cracks in their persona. Second, understand the unconscious. This flows from the first point. You're not just observing behavior, you're trying to understand the hidden needs and repressed desires that are driving that behavior. You're trying to see their shadow. Third, and this one is huge, cultivate patience. The manual's adamant that impatience is a sign of neediness and weakness. It reveals that you're driven by your own unfulfilled desires. True power, it says, lies in the ability to wait, to let tension build, to move at a pace that builds trust, not alarm. And finally, number 4. Seek knowledge. This means studying psychology, mythology, history, but most importantly, it means studying yourself. You have to become an expert on your own psyche, your own triggers, your own shadow, before you can ever hope to understand someone else's. And just as you're thinking, okay, I get it, this is a deep psychological practice, the book hits you over the head with another massive warning. This isn't a game. It's not a thought experiment. When you start engaging with another person's unconscious, with their shadow, you are literally awakening powerful primal forces within them. The manual is deadly serious about this. If you stir up these deep emotions, things like obsession, jealousy, rage, or even profound love, you don't get to just walk away clean. The consequences of that awakening will absolutely come back to you. You are part of the equation now. This brings us to the final section of the manual, and this is where it zooms all the way out. It moves beyond the dynamic between two people and suggests we're all part of something much, much bigger. The argument here is that our deeply personal dramas of love, attraction, and betrayal, they aren't actually that personal at all. We are often just unknowingly stepping into ancient roles, reenacting scripts that were written thousands of years ago. Think about these epic stories. Samson, the strongest man alive, undone by his love for Delilah. Paris and Helen, the lovers whose passion ignited the Trojan War and destroyed a civilization. Orpheus, the mythic musician who literally travels to the underworld, to the land of the dead, to reclaim his lost love Eurydice. The manual claims these are not just old tales, they are archetypes. They are fundamental patterns of human behavior that exist in what Jung called the collective unconscious, a shared psychic inheritance of all humanity. So when you engage in this deep act of seduction, the manual warns you are invoking these archetypes. You are stepping onto a mythical stage. And if you don't know which play you're in, you are almost certainly doomed to repeat its tragic ending. And here we have it, the final, most important lesson of the entire text. After all the talk of strategy, of psychology, of understanding others, it all comes full circle and points directly back at you. The act of trying to deeply understand and influence another person is ultimately a mirror. It forces you to confront your own motivations, your own needs, your own emptiness, your own weaknesses, and most of all, it forces you to confront your own shadow. The entire project of seducing another becomes, in the end, the project of confronting yourself. There is no escaping it. So we're left with this incredibly profound and, let's be honest, pretty intimidating question. The book starts by asking how you can attract someone else, but it ends by asking what you will find when you finally look at yourself. It suggests that the real journey isn't outward, toward the conquest of another, but inward, toward the understanding and mastery of the self. And that journey is infinitely more difficult, and perhaps infinitely more rewarding than any simple conquest. It leaves us to wonder, what parts of ourselves have we kept hidden in the dark? And what would happen if we finally found the courage to look?